Are we ready for our penultimate keynote of the day at Building Brands? Now, she's a content queen. Content appears quite a bit. She's the co-author of Valuable Content Marketing, the UK's first book on content marketing. She's an independent consultant. She runs a monthly content writing club. She believes that the quest to create valuable content is a great catalyst for a more customer-centered approach to business. She's looking to lead a listening revolution in the business world, and she's a cold water swimmer. The colder, the better. She's now going to regale you all with huge content lessons from her 3 worst speaking gigs. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Sonja Nisson.
Hello. So I am talking about content today. You won't be surprised by that. And I'm going to do, this is a bit of an experiment in brutal honesty, so I hope you'll bear with me. The question for today, and the question that's really kind of engaged me through all of my career, is what does it take for our content to be truly, and I mean really, valuable? And a talk like this is just another form of content. It's a very powerful form of content. You're putting your ideas out there and getting them across. But what does it take for a talk to be truly valuable? Now, through my career, I've been lucky. Since I published the book, it was pretty much 10 years ago today. And in that time, I've been asked somehow to do hundreds of speaking gigs and workshops around the world. From amazing businesses in Lanzarote, there were a load of leisure businesses who wanted to collaborate on content and therefore get the island promoted. Brilliant idea, and they asked me and my co-author to come out, talk on content there. I've been to Romania with amazing digital marketers who wanted to learn so much. A fantastic experience there as well. And then some super smart creatives, for example, in Chicago. I've had some fantastic experiences. So it all sounds good, right? It sounds amazing. Lots of great gigs all over the world. Now, some of those gigs, luckily, have gone incredibly well. I'm hoping this will be one of them. But others have totally and utterly bombed. And I've been really thinking about this with my co-author as well, and thinking, so what's the difference between the two? What makes one talk go really, really well and one talk completely bomb? So what I thought I would try with you lot is to look at the learnings from them, to really unpick the talks that have gone spectacularly badly and see if I can share those lessons, for myself and with all of you, so that with all the forms of content that we create and we valiantly get out there, whether that's the posts you're creating, the blog articles you're writing, the videos you're sharing, the books potentially you could be writing for your businesses, or talks like this, that we can all learn to be more valuable in what we do. So I did really tussle with this, the wisdom of sharing mistakes and errors, so do bear with me on that one as well. But I thought that, it's 2023, when better time in the world for some brutal honesty without all the professionalism that goes normally over the top. So are you with me? Are you up for some brutal honesty and some lessons from the dark, if you like, of the content world? Yes? All up for that? Good. Does anybody want... Who has done public speaking in the room? Hands up. Who, I know you have, John. Who enjoys public speaking? That's probably about a fifth of the people who put their hands up, I think, including John. Are there any potential public speakers, people who want to do it, who've never done it before? One. I can understand that why. By the end of this talk, what I would love is that I give you some confidence, so that if this is something that you're thinking about doing, even if you didn't put your hands up that time, but maybe you've got a little inkling for it, you'd give it a go by the end of this talk. So that's my ambition for you. If not, you're going to learn a lot about what it takes for content to be truly valuable. So, gig number 1. That was my content journey. That one. Right, gig number 1. This was my first ever speaking gig. So myself and my co-author, Sharon Tanton, have been invited by our publishers to go to the British Library and talk about marketing trends. We hadn't even finished our book. We were halfway through writing it, and it was stressful as hell. And the other speakers who were going to be speaking with us were experienced authors. Some of them had written 4 or 5 books, and we'd only got halfway through one of them. Some stiff competition there. So we pulled ourselves up to London from Bristol, and I can remember getting to Carluccio's by St Pancras Station. Sharon had seafood linguine, I think. I had a basic lasagna. We got quieter and quieter through the meal until we couldn't talk at all. A bad attack of nerves had descended. Now, we had rehearsed this talk. It'd been weeks of planning, and we'd got advice from all quarters. We were told, I think the best piece of advice was clench your buttocks, because apparently that makes for a wobble-free voice. All of this had taken into account. We were right up for this talk, but when we got in the room, we were absolutely cowed by what we heard, because a bit like Pete just now, a fantastic talk ahead of us, we were so worried about the competition, the peers in the room, that, I'd like to say it all went absolutely swimmingly, but it was not a talk I enjoyed the most on that particular one. And I think the reason being was that we weren't focusing on the audience, on the people in front of us. We were so worried about our peers and trying to be credible and impress them that we forgot who we were actually talking to. We had some of our best clients in the room. We had some amazing marketing agencies and marketing people as well. But all we could do, we were basically looking over our shoulders, looking behind us, and worrying about the competition and not worrying about the people actually in front of us. We had loads to say, but it didn't necessarily connect with our audience. And I think I'm a content coach as part of my job, and I'm coaching people who are, finding the confidence to create blogs or newsletters or talks, whatever it is. And one of the main things I come across is that same thing. It's like, but who am I? Who am I to do this when I've got, Pete or two Petes, who are incredibly experienced in the field? Why should anybody listen to me? And so you get so cowed by that, you can't put your own ideas out. And I think Sharon and I were right in that situation at the time, worrying about other people, looking over our shoulder, and not actually focusing on the audience in front of us. So it wasn't as relevant and exciting as it could be. And I think the result of that was, what we did was just bombard people with what we know. We were so keen to be credible and that's not the same as giving a good talk or creating a good piece of content, is it? It's got to be relevant, and it's got to engage the people in front of you. So our first ever talk, buttocks clenched, in the British Library was not the best experience, but we really learned from that. And so the second talk that we did, we'd taken all of these experiences and all of that learning into account. That's the lesson. Focus on those you want to help, not on your competition. The second talk, we reeled ourselves back up to London again, and this was for the London Boat Show. The talk was to a load of leisure businesses, marine leisure businesses in London, and I was really, really excited about this because I come from a family of sailors, so I was thinking, brilliant, I know the audience, I know what I would love to say to them, I'm sure we can help them. And we'd done a bit of research, we'd looked at a couple of websites of marine businesses that we knew about, and it was around their websites. How could you make their websites more valuable? And so we were super excited, and it started really, really well. We got into the room, there's a great big crowd of marine businesses. We were regaling them with tales of businesses that got it right, businesses that got it wrong, and we were so keen on this that we'd created this little animation for them in advance, specifically looking at some of those businesses and looking at what went right and what went wrong. Now, this was 10 years ago, so you're going to have to bear with me with the technology of this one. But I'm going to show you the video now because it was all going absolutely swimmingly up until the time we put this video on. Now, I'm going to ask you afterwards what went wrong. It's quite likely you'll say it's the quality of the video, but that wasn't actually the problem. So I'm going to play it now with that in mind, and let's see if you can work it out. So this was around a fictitious sailing company. We'd taken some of the lessons we'd looked at from the web, and this was how they were losing people on their websites and how frustrating that was from a customer experience perspective. Let's see if this works from 10 years back.
Hello. I am thinking of taking my family on a sailing holiday.
We sell sailing holidays.
That's a good start. My husband has a lot of experience, but my children are novices. Would you have a holiday that suits us both?
We sell sailing holidays. We are accredited by the RYA.
Right. I see. Can you tell me more about how you teach children to sail? What will they learn? Will they be safe? Mine are a bit of a handful.
We sell sailing holidays. Here is a picture of a boat, and another boat, and some sea. I can't remember where it is, but it's quite pretty.
Where can I find information about holidays for children?
Here's a picture of a boat. We are accredited by the RYA. Here's that sea picture again. Oh look, the Fastnet race. Now that is a very good picture.
Okay, let me try something else. Tell me more about your holidays for experienced sailors.
We are investors in people. We have 150 years of combined experience in sailing. Here is a picture of another boat.
This is ridiculous. I have lots of questions and you are not answering them.
Do you want to see the boat picture again? Or the sea one? Or the Fastnet race?
No, I don't. Thank you. Goodbye.
Oh, she's gone.
Can anybody work out why the temperature dropped in the room so dramatically when we landed that animation, having been going so well?
Was it because it was sailboats and not powerboats?
No, it wasn't that, but a good question, a good answer. What was the one over there?
That they all love the Fastnet race?
No, it wasn't that as well. It was worse than that, but that's a good answer. Good point. That is a really good point. That's an interesting thing you say there. That could have been that, but it was actually worse because we'd created the thing on the fictitious video was sailingholidays.com, and we hadn't done our research. And the CEO of sailingholidays.com was sitting in the front row of the audience, and he was looking absolute daggers. And the rest of the audience knew exactly who he was. They knew there was a sailingholidays.com, and they were aghast that we'd made this faux pas in the room. But the weird thing was that there was a woman sitting next to him, a younger woman, and she was actually laughing so hard she was falling off her chair, and it turned out that she was his daughter and she was working for him as his marketing director, and she'd been trying to tell him to change that bloody website for years. And he wasn't listening at all, but he really was listening now because I'd basically shamed him in front of the entire audience of his entire industry. And anyway, the upshot was he did change his website. We had good contact with his daughter after that. But the lesson from a content point of view, which is so embarrassing and sort of cringy from our point of view, is you have to do your research, not just the scanty research, but deep research, so you don't create embarrassing experiences like that with the content that you're creating. And I think in the age of AI now with ChatGPT, which I'm sure you've talked about this morning as well, you know, the facts are not generally to be trusted at all times. So, you know, that level of research to make sure you've got your story straight, your facts right, you're not embarrassing anybody, is really, really important, and is something that, from that deep, cringy experience, I learned a hell of a lot from. So the lesson on that one, valuable content lesson, always do your research, and I mean really do your research on that one as well. So, talk number 3. Now, this hurt a little bit, I have to be said. This is a second stock photo, isn't it, of people falling asleep in the audience. This was for 250 lawyers and accountants. It was my gig, not Sharon. She's got nothing to do with this one. She can't take any shame from it. And I'd been called in last minute, so somebody had been asked to do the gig, who couldn't do it. It was really highly paid, and I was really, really in need of the money at the time. So being honest again, my son was having difficulties at the time. He had anxiety. He was at school. This was about 2015, I think. And the business was struggling a little bit as a result. So this paid gig was a really necessary thing. So I shuttled my way up to London. I'd done this talk time and time again. I think the theme of the event was original composition or something like that. So I twisted it a little bit, and it was something to do with original content and standing up for the crowd, something like that. And I was bombarded into this room of 250 professional service people, and I got the after lunch slot, which as a speaker, Pete did incredibly well. It's not normally the most sought after, I would say, at that time. So I dragged myself up on stage, and 250 well-fed suits filled the seats in front of me. And the two in the front row promptly fell asleep. And they didn't fall asleep quietly either. So as I started talking, they started snoring. And the crescendo got louder and louder and louder. So I was battling my way through this material. and over the top of this of these snoring lawyers, basically. But that wasn't the only problem. So, I was talking to them about my valuable content marketing approach, which I've written about in the book, which the premise of that is basically help, don't sell. And share your expertise generously for free with your audience. None of you would be surprised by this. I'm sure, from a content marketing perspective, you get it. But it was news to the room, and didn't go down well. So after I finished the talk, the snoring lawyers were still snoring at that particular point. The rapturous pause was weak. I hadn't actually woken them up at that particular stage. But the slight grumbling in the room afterwards did wake them up. And it was basically the lawyers in the room taking offence to what I'd said about sharing your expertise for free. And they didn't connect with what I said. Lawyers weren't my audience. The people that I was speaking to at the time and working with, the people I loved and respected were smaller businesses. They were businesses with purpose, agencies trying to do good things. I didn't know and I didn't understand that audience. And the examples that I shared were not as relevant as they could have been to the people in the room. I didn't take my audience with me through the examples I shared and the way I got my experience over. I still 100% believe that approach would work for any business, whether you're a professional lawyer, a sailing business, an independent consultant like me. But I didn't take them with me, and it was a painful lesson in only doing the creating content for those that you really understand, that you really care about, and with respect as well for the audience that you shared. So what should I have done in that situation? One, I should have potentially worked to understand them harder, or I should have turned the gig down, actually, because it wasn't my niche and I didn't understand it. So I think the lesson for me, and this is a big one, I think, as well, difficult sometimes if you're in agency world and you don't have necessarily that rapport with all of the people that you're dealing with, but is to only create with love and respect for your audience. So create with love and respect for your audience. So those three lessons. Oh, this is the other one. I got this last night, actually. I heard somebody say this. You might have heard it before, but I think this is a real big one. Is nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So you can have all the knowledge in the world, like I felt I did at that particular time, but I didn't care enough about the audience. They couldn't feel that, care in the room, so I lost them in that side as well. So nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So just midway summary from those three shockers. Know your audience, really do your research this time. Focus on your ideal customer from that coaching perspective. Again, what I'm trying to get people to do, not focusing on their competition, is to focus on the people in front of you. Really think about the one person in front of you that you really, really, really want to do business with, or you really care about creating for, and create content for them. And respect for those that you're creating content for, and making sure you work hard to understand that. So those were my lessons, and they become even clearer, I think, when you start looking at talks that went really, really well. And I mentioned before I was lucky enough to go to Chicago, to be called out there to do a talk, and it was for some amazing creatives. It was the How Interactive conference over there in Chicago. I'd never been to America before. I was so super excited about it all by myself. I loved it. And it was a really interesting conference because the way it was set up, and there were people from Facebook, people from Salesforce, people from Google, all the big companies, but you could only tell messy, gritty stories. You weren't allowed to stand up and do a slick presentation on something that went absolutely right. And because of that, it was the most compelling conference, because even from Facebook and Salesforce, they'd stood up and they told real stories of what went right and what went wrong. It was partly the inspiration for this talk today, because it was so intriguing hearing these guys, admitting that it's not perfect. It's really not. Nothing is perfect on that side. So my job was around content strategy. It was content again, Chris. You wouldn't be surprised. And I told a story of a project that I've been working for an organisation up in Crewe. They were a charitable organisation. They'd worked so hard on their content. And my client was a guy called Jeff, He was 78, I think, at the time. He was like the oldest digital marketer in the country, probably. And he was so overexcited by the content side. He got himself an Apple Watch. He was constantly checking the stats of the website and the MailChimp and everything else on his watch. He was absolutely brilliant. And I loved the project. And, we'd made so many faux pas collectively on the way to this amazing sort of content outcome that we had. And I could tell the story of all of that. So I think, with that in mind, what went right about it was, my excitement. My excitement shone through on that one because I genuinely wanted to tell the story. I did care about the audience. I know the creative space. There's been people I've been working for, and I was really excited to create for them. I had done my research. I really, really had, to make sure that I wasn't going to offend anybody in the room by the examples that I shared or anything else. I genuinely couldn't wait to get that story across. It was stories from the dark as well as the light. It was a messy, messy case study, and I think there's something in that, something that we all connect with, LinkedIn or otherwise, and I will definitely accept your invitation on that one. So I think the lessons for me, out of all of this, let the enthusiasm shine through, share lessons from the light, but also share lessons from the dark. And Pete mentioned trust, I think, and if you do that, the upshot is that people trust you more. This is an equation which has been so fundamental to the thinking that I've done over the years around the content side. I wanted to share it with you too. Do you know this one? Have you seen it before? Did you see it today?
No, we've been doing it at work.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And there's a guy called Charles Green, and he wrote a book called The Trusted Advisor, and it was the first business book I ever bought. I was in sales before marketing, and I found this book, and it just changed my thinking completely. And so he thinks, trustworthiness is something that you can learn and you can create. And there's an equation around that, which I wanted to share with you. It shows why all this stuff works. So he believes that trust is a combination of credibility, that thing I was trying to get, when I first went to the talk at the library. It's really important, that you're credible in your space. Reliability, that you do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. You turn up time and again. Have a blog, for example, which is continually updated, doesn't look like a tumbleweed or a ghost town or anything like that. So that's important too. But then the I is for intimacy, and I think that's a really interesting word in our marketing world. It's quite a difficult word in some ways. Intimacy means showing up as a real human being, warts and all, stories from the dark. It means you're showing your humanity, basically. So if you can be credible, reliable, and you show that intimacy, that human side, you'll be trusted. But all of that can be destroyed by the S at the bottom of it, which is self-orientation. And this is the issue that I see time and time again when I'm coaching people or looking at their content strategies. It's too self-oriented. It's not about the audience. It's about you. It's too me, not enough you. Does this make sense from your experience of it as well? And I think when we're creating content, that's everything. So with those stories in mind, come on, that's it. The principles that I've talked about today become even more important, I think. Know your audience, do your research, focus on one person, care about those you're creating content for, and work really hard to understand them. Let your humanity, your enthusiasm, your curiosity shine through, and don't be afraid to share lessons from the dark. And I think it's that humanity really that sweeps through all of this. This is a manifesto that Sharon and I shared from the book. And it's about putting other people first. It's about being generous. It's about telling great stories. And it's about writing with love, writing stories from the heart. And it's those human qualities, I think, that make a talk or a blog or a post or a piece of content actually succeed or fail. So my motivation to you is to feel the fear and to do it anyway. If you're thinking about starting a blog, a newsletter, putting yourself out there, God forbid, doing a talk like this, dare to fail, because it might just get you to amazing places and get you to do amazing things. Thank you very much.